Hello, everyone, and welcome back. It is me, your favorite Jackson. Uh, and we're going to talk about stuff and things. And things and stuff. Uh, it says on my screen there's like two Jacksons, like one on top of the other on the little thingy. Well, joining me today is Peter from Gonna Go For It. How you doing? I think you're muted.
Which is my best feature? If I'm muted at that, I mean, you can ask anyone. I'm much better muted than unmuted because I tend to say things. But
No,
anyway,
I
anyway,
mean, you do say things. We all say things here.
yes,
That's part of the show.
yes.
Yeah.
Well,
It says in the bottom left corner of my screen, it's got Jackson on top of Jackson.
it's got Jackson on top. What? Is that allowed? I mean, on YouTube?
I don't know. Jacksonception. Who knows? And
I
then
don't.
also joining us is
Hold on.
Nestlig, one of my editors.
Hold,
The infinite Peter.
Yeah, let me see if I can fix the Jackson on top of Jackson. Now it's going to happen again, I guess.
I mean, it's not.
Okay.
It's not a big problem. I'm not worried about it.
How's it now?
It's still there, but it's okay. I'm not worried about it.
That is weird.
Also, hello.
Hello, Nestlig. Welcome.
Nestle.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's see. Well, a few days ago, we published the Lungfish's Tale on this channel, and if you will remember from our show last Thursday, we one of the things we discussed was the DiscoveryU's definition of macroevolution, which is not the normal definition of macroevolution that we use. It is their own weird definition, which is a fundamental change, right? A change in, or something like that. A fundamental change in the biology of a structure, or something like that.
Yeah, it's still vague, of course.
Yeah.
It's the point. That's the point of it.
Right. And the funny thing was,
more vague it is, the better, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if you want to define it that way, then you have to acknowledge that the entire fish to tetrapod transition was not macroevolution by that definition. There was no, the fundamental biology was not changed, right?
Well, again, since it's so vague that they can, like, when you bring up such an example, then they will say no, it is a fundamental change for whatever reason they can think of on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the whole point of having a vague definition. The goalposts can move around willy-nilly. Yeah.
Right. Also joining us right now, we have Icarus, Vesta Freya, and RJ. Hello, all. Welcome to the show. And Majestic Peebeck. Hello. Welcome. I still did not fiddle at all with the membership stuff this week. I apologize for anybody who cares about that. I did not do it. Didn't look at it. I just forget. I don't do the show and I forget. So, that's my fault. So we're going to continue on with the DiscoveryU, which is not a university. It's just a YouTube channel or blog.
I think like the U stands the U stands for uneducated.
Yes, Discovery Uneducated. Yeah.
Yes.
Discovery NAU, not a university.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so far it's just been silliness. They've talked about or completely misunderstood embryology because they're not teaching you about embryology. They're giving you like bullet points to argue with a teacher, right?
Yes.
So this isn't a textbook.
An avalanche of talking points. So you can do the Gish Gallop in class. That's basically it.
Right. Yeah, this isn't you're not supposed to learn. You're not learning in this. You are just accruing talking points. This is not meant to teach you anything useful. You're not gaining any experience or knowledge from taking any of these classes. And it's
unteaching
to pretend.
unteaching.
It is unteaching. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. It's pulling the knowledge out of your brain, actually.
Which is what the U stands for, unteaching. I'm going to
Unteaching, yeah.
come up with all kinds of definitions for the U in DiscoveryU.
But yeah, it's been pretty terrible so far. They've lied about fossils and embryology and the Galapagos finches. We talked about that last time. We're starting off this time with the peppered moth, and like I said while we were off screen, I happened to glance at the page while Peter had it up, and it made me tired already before we even started. It's so bad. Oh my goodness, it's so bad.
It's such a novel point because we haven't heard anyone talk about the peppered moth for a long time.
Yeah.
At least, I think, a day, probably. So
yeah, if that.
It's one of their favorite things, the peppered moth.
Yes. And the funny thing about the peppered moth is sort of like with the weirdness on speciation is the Discovery Institute wants to appear legitimate. They're like, we're not young Earth creationists,
No,
but
we just copy them.
Also, right, exactly. Yeah, literally. Some of these talking points, I swear, are like taken straight from Kent Hovind last week. They're like, we're not creationists, we're not young Earth creationists, and they say like, we can accept common ancestry, but they really don't accept it any more than young Earth creationists do.
Mm-hmm.
They just kind of say, yeah, common ancestry kind of happens, but then if you talk to them about speciation or you talk to them about natural selection, they get very cagey about it all of a sudden because they don't want to actually commit. They don't want to commit to something came about by natural processes, because if you open that door, suddenly you can get a lot more things in and you're on the primrose path to macroevolution, and they can't have that.
Yeah. And we need to point out they're not creationists, because when they had to look for a name, they chose DiscoveryU as opposed to PragerU. It's creationist. It's not.
Yeah.
I mean, the creativity of these people never ceases to amaze me. But maybe that's just me. I don't know.
Yeah, they're not very creative. I mean, they've been using the same talking points in some cases literally since the 1800s. The whole there aren't enough transitional fossils was an argument Cuvier made in the mid 1800s, like or the early 1800s.
You could say they have co-opted the name from
you sure
something
could.
else.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, or like the discontinuity.
It's a Gouldian acceptation.
Yes, yeah, exactly. But yeah, these arguments are literally 200 years old in some cases, and they don't care that they've been wrong for 200 years. It's not about being right or wrong. It's just about supporting their fantasy. ID has no model, so they can't apply it from RJ. Yes, yeah, exactly, 100%. It has, even as RJ likes to say, it has. What is it? They have fewer fact claims, but all the dogma of young Earth creationism, I think.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And West of Freya, my bar is buried outside. It's 6 feet under. That's how low my bar is. I'm just saying.
Like it's a very funny situation. Like if in the explicit creationist case, God can do literally anything. Like there's no constraint on the ability, so you cannot make any predictions from that.
No, Neslick, you've got that all wrong. You've got that all wrong. Right. God cannot do anything, because I've been told by several very reliable sources on Twitter that he can't lie. So no, he can't do everything. Although the Bible does.
Doesn't he lie in the Bible?
The Bible says he sends delusions. Which,
okay, all right.
I mean, that's a nice cop-out. right?
I guess he's not technically lying.
So
Yeah,
in-
he's making
so
you
in this-
believe false information. Yeah.
So in the sense, DiscoveryU is not lying; they are just sending people delusions.
Strong
They're,
delusions, very strong
very
delusions.
strong
Yes.
delusion. Yeah,
I like that. I
Yeah.
approve and appreciate that.
yeah.
We shall.
My
we'll
point.
from,
My
from,
point.
from here on in, we shall call them delusional you.
Delusional you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Nestle, you're right. Yes.
Yeah, my point is that the race cannot make mistakes because there is an the mechanism is unconstrained, and in the intelligent design case, the mechanism is still unconstrained because they don't have any idea of what the designer can or cannot do. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
So-
He could do anything or nothing, and so any
and we don't know, and we don't
yeah,
know what he can or cannot do. Yeah,
anything we see could be intelligently designed. We have no idea. We have no
Well,
null model.
It depends. If we had a DeLorean and we could go back to just before what was it, 1984, then the intelligent design books would still talk about gods. I mean, Kitzmiller versus Dover.
Yeah.
C design proponents. Yes. I mean.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Never forget. Mm-hmm. Never let them forget either. Don't let them ever forget. Don't let them try to pull the wool over your eyes.
That's not to say that some individuals who proclaim ID are like in their hearts or minds like lying about their motives.
But sure, absolutely.
But the discovery, what's the full name again? The Discovery
Institute for
Discovery Institute. Yeah, they are
like culture and science or something like that.
Yes, yes, they are like hiding what they are about, and it's a very, and you can clearly see at like all older versions of their website, and you can see like, curious how the background of the website has changed since the last few decades.
Yeah.
Yep.
Alrighty. All right. Well, let's open our textbooks to page 75, and see what we got.
There we go.
Also, question: I see on the website that there are also quizzes and introduction videos. Do we cover those or not?
I'm not bothering with those. I mean, the introduction video is just like it's just a little brief overview, and I don't care that much.
Yeah. All right. We can
the meat of it's here. All right. Peppered moths. So we're still in the same chapter as last week. The peppered moth is a species of moth, indeed it is, Biston betularia, that lives in many parts of the world, including England, much to their own dismay. Some peppered moths have black wings, and others have white speckled wings. So, I'm sorry, I have to pause for a moment on this. So some peppered moths have black wings. Okay, so the peppered moth morph, the black one, that came to prominence in the 1800s, late 1800s into the early 1900s. So that morph actually originated around the year 1812. And we know this because researchers have sequenced their genes and figured out when the mutation that conferred that melanism arose, and it was around the year 1812, something like that. And so it turns out it was a transposon. A transposon jumped into, I think it was like the promoter of a pigment gene, and it got like uber transcribed or something like that, and that's why they're darker. That's why they're black instead of white with black spots.
I may have misremembered the details, but if I can remember it, I think like the transposon carried a promoter by
you're probably
itself,
right.
And it's basically it took the transposon, took a promoter and put it near even inside the gene itself.
Yeah, I think you're right.
In an intron, I think. Yeah.
So that transposon, it caused that gene to get uber transcribed. So instead of producing a little bit of black, it produced lots of black, and so it just turned them dark. But okay. According to many textbooks, originally there was a predominance of lighter colored moths because they blended in with the light colored lichen on tree trunks, giving them camouflage so they wouldn't be seen and eaten by birds. Yes, typically that's true. During Britain's Industrial Revolution, airborne pollutants killed the lichens and darkened the tree trunks with soot. I don't know if it necessarily killed all the lichens, but it did darken the
Yeah.
trees and rocks and grass and buildings and people with soot.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And people's
covered
lungs.
everything.
Yeah.
And people's lungs. Yeah, the darker forms of the moth now had a selective advantage. So they could blend into the tree trunks and avoid being eaten by birds. Yeah, all that all that changed was the relative frequency of light colored and dark colored moths, meaning that even if this story is true, all it demonstrates is microevolution.
And
Again,
everything changed when the Fire Nation
yeah.
attacked.
And everything. Yeah. So far, yes. Yeah, all that's fine because that's all it was ever meant to be, right? The whole point, as we discussed last time, was providing an example of natural selection that occurred on human timescales. That was it. Now, creationists don't like that, and intelligent design proponents don't like that, which is really weird because intelligent design proponents are supposed to be okay with natural selection, but
Mhm.
they don't. Anytime you give them an example, they argue against it. So it's darned if you do, darned if you don't. But there are problems. There was a moth in the ointment, as it were. There is controversy over whether peppered moths normally rest on tree trunks in the wild. Okay, so actually there isn't. There is no controversy over this. This is a lie. Actually, it was a misstatement. RJ,
Mhm.
you're there in the live chat. I believe it was a comment Jerry Coyne made. RJ, maybe you can refresh my memory. I think it was a comment Jerry Coyne made, but then Jonathan Wells took that comment as moths don't rest on tree trunks in the wild, which just isn't true. It's simply not true. I literally posted a picture the other day of a photo somebody took of a peppered moth on a tree. It's not just peppered moths. I myself have taken pictures of moths and butterflies on trees and on plants and rocks, and they've even landed on my own clothing, and I've managed to take pictures of them. The idea that, like, what do they think is happening? And seriously, let's just pause for a moment and think about this. What do they think is happening? Where do they think moths go? Do they
Like
think moths are in a perpetual state of flying? Because that's not true. We obviously know that's not true.
Jackson,
But that's the only other option.
But you know that's how they escaped the flood. They just kept flying.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. It's also a non-argument because even if they didn't land on trees, everything else was covered in soot as well. So it should have the same effect that the darker ones were harder to spot.
Right, and they would still be harder to spot, right?
Yes.
Because they're still flying against a dark background. Even if they never landed, they would still be harder to spot.
Yes. So it's these people are just
it's also the case, and it's also the case that even if they predominantly, like even assuming they predominantly land on the leaves, they are still hard to see on the leaves. So they are like, it's just that if they happen to land on the tree trunk, then they would be more exposed. But in the case of having camouflage, then they are less conspicuous in that case.
Because you have to think, like, we would just apply the tiniest bit of logic of thought to this at all. Apply just the tiniest bit. Obviously, the soot from the factories is not only landing on tree trunks. It's not like heat-seeking missiles where they're only attaching themselves to the tree trunks. It's hitting everything indiscriminately. The tree trunks, the leaves, the rocks, the grass, the bushes, literally everything is getting coated by soot. Literally everything. Buildings, people, as we said. So if the moth lands anywhere at all, and it's darkly colored, it's going to have a selective advantage over white moths. Literally anywhere. You know what? Actually, hold on. I'm going to find a picture on iNaturalist. Okay, here. Let me see.
Can I
Okay,
can I just
Peter,
jump?
can you show my screen? Can you show my screen, please?
No, no, no. We don't have a setup for that.
I mean, can you just go back to the three of us?
Yes.
Okay.
So hold on. I lost my thing
Up a little bit more. Okay, right there. Yeah.
there.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. Go back to the three of us.
Yeah, go back to the three screens, please. Yeah. I
There
just
we
want to
go.
make a point. So there's a moth that I took a picture of a few days ago that landed on my door. Would you look at that? It landed on a door. How crazy is that? Whoa. Let me show you another picture. Here's actually a butterfly that landed on my pants. Can you see it? Maybe kind of hard to see. Look at that. He landed on me. How cool is that? But but no, apparently moths and butterflies never land ever. They never stop moving. Oh, here's another one. Here's another picture I took of a moth that landed on a wall the other day, a few days ago. Look at that. This is such a stupid argument. These are pictures I personally took as I was just going around my normal day stuff. What is this? Oh, no, this is caterpillar. Never mind. You get the point, I think.
It's
You
it's
get the point.
it's kind of weird. I had the same thing with someone telling me that the
Here's another one.
International Space Station didn't exist, and I showed him a picture I took where it's flying past the moon. I took
Yep.
that picture, so what on earth is flying past the moon? You can take pictures of things. This is something that both creationists and ID proponents haven't seen yet. But Jackson, that's obviously fake because that's a dark one that would have been eaten by a bird.
Right.
I mean,
So these are pictures I took on iNaturalist. As I just go about my day, I'm always, seeing bugs and plants and stuff. I just snap a picture of it and identify it. But no, apparently moths and butterflies never stop. They are constantly flying, always going around all the time. Yes, okay. Coin miswrote as 2, Wells escalated to 1. The actual Majerus book had a third of samples in his own text as seen on trees. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just about to point out that there was a guy named Majoris in the early 2000s. Yeah, he carried experiments. Like it took 135. How long did it take? I don't know how long it took. Like several years, I think. And of the 135 moths he examined, over half were on 3 branches, mostly on the lower half of the branch, and 37% were on tree trunks, mostly on the north side, and only 12.6% were resting on the underside of twigs. So yeah, there is there's still a very large portion resting on tree trunks.
I'd like to draw
they don't have to be.
Oh, sorry.
And they don't have to be always be on tree trunks. Even if they spend some of the times on tree trunks, it will still be an advantage to not be conspicuous.
Right.
During those times, yeah.
I do also want to draw attention to Icarus saying flies never land anywhere. They're called flies, not lands. Correct.
Yes. Yeah, except for the ones in the experiment that where they wanted to test evolution and they ended up with no wings. According to Mr. Kenthoven, they're called crawls. They can't fly.
But anyway, so we can go back to the other page. I just want to show that. I just want to show you all that I personally have taken pictures of moths landing on plants and buildings. And so this idea that they never land on plants or buildings is stupid. It's just stupid. There's no I can't be nice about it. I don't think we should. It's just stupid. It's brain dead. It's a brain dead argument.
There's one that is even worse. I just mentioned Mr. Kenthoven. He says that is not natural selection. It's just the birds eating the moths they see better.
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean,
It's
if
not natural
that's
selection. It's differential reproductive success. Right.
it's yeah,
Yeah.
if that doesn't break your brain, I don't know what does. But yeah, anyway, there we go.
Yep. Nope.
I
You're absolutely
also
right.
I also see that the Coin's original comments were more like saying like, oh, it may not be an example of natural selection, but it is still a clearly example of evolution. But then later, when Majoris's experiments came in, then Coin said, oh, all right, yes, it is an example of natural selection. That's basically what
Yep.
Coin was talking about. So yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So anyway, it's real stupid. It's a stupid argument. Anyway. Okay. All right. We can keep going with that. So many textbook photograph, and this is one, Peter, you've talked about before, showing peppered moths on tree trunks are staged. Okay, yes,
Yeah.
Because
sometimes you have...
you can ask the moths very nicely to sit still for a
Yeah.
picture.
Yeah, hold still,
Yeah.
yeah, smile for us. Yeah, no, it's again,
Thumbs up.
this is extraordinarily stupid. That's what this is. This is extraordinarily stupid. Yeah, and you can, like I showed, you can take pictures, but you have to be fast. If you're trying to take a like a textbook grade photo, it's probably better to either take like hundreds and hundreds of photos and hope that one of them turned out well, or if it's something small where you can just do that, you can just like stage the photo in a way that looks good, then just do that. It's easy. Why make things hard on yourself when you're making a textbook? What's the point, right?
Yeah.
Some experts believe the moths rest in hidden locations where they're out of sight from hungry birds. Yeah,
Not
that
mutually exclusive.
that probably happens.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is
Like I
which is
I
also
just
which
I
is
just
also where
quote-
camouflage
oh, sorry.
comes in. If you
Right.
have
Mhm.
camouflage, you're hidden in plain sight. I mean,
Right.
try to spot an owl on a tree trunk. That's going to
Right.
be pretty difficult at times.
I quoted a like I just quoted a section like it says that the Majoris's experiments showed that over 1/3 of the moths were resting on tree trunks, but they were
Right.
mostly on the north side. Why
Mhm.
would they be on the north side? Because that is in the shade, not
Mhm.
directly in the sunlight. So
Right.
yeah.
Right,
So
because
it's not mutually exclusive. This whole point is not mutually exclusive with resting on tree trunks.
That explains it
Right.
because the Bible Belt is in the south, so they wouldn't be able to see them. They're on the other side of the tree, guys. Come on.
Hey, the sun never sets on the British Empire because God doesn't trust the Brits in the dark. That's all I'm
Yeah.
saying. Yeah, no, you're right. It's organisms often have behaviors that help mitigate being captured by predators, right? The idea that you can either have camouflage or you can have behaviors that help you hide. Like, you can't have both.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. That's nonsense.
I would suspect that if a moth lands and it senses direct sunlight, it will tend to fly again
Right.
away from the direct exposure to sunlight. So
Mm-hmm.
so that's why that's maybe one basic behavioral instinct that makes it seek places that are less exposed.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Today, environmental laws reduce the amount of pollution, and selection now favors the light-colored moths, which have once again come to dominate the population. Therefore, the peppered moth is now becoming at best an example of oscillating selection, where there is no net evolutionary change over time. Again, was never the point. The point was always that it is an example of natural selection, and that's what it is. It's an example of natural selection.
Yeah,
And it's not the only
the
one.
last point, and they basically admitted here, they call it oscillating selection, whatever that is,
Right.
but still selection. So they admit the point.
Yeah. Oh my God, he admitted.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're not the only ones, right? Because over 100 species of insects, are just, I guess, arthropods, and are now known to have also undergone this melanism as a result of pollution.
Oh, really?
Over 100 different
Oh,
species. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I was looking at a paper a while back, and it listed that there were like a whole bunch of them. But yeah, industrial melanism has caused shifts like this in lots of different species of insects. It's not just peppered moths; it's lots of different species.
Also, other arthropods like spiders, even or not, or maybe.
I'm not sure. I don't remember. I remember it saying like over 100 species of. I believe actually I think it was insects, but I don't remember if
Insects.
it was.
All right.
I don't remember how many or which groups specifically. But yeah, lots and lots of species. So this was all very dumb. It was a long. Basically, this section is like pulling teeth to get them to admit that we've observed natural selection, which they do very quickly at the end. They just go, "Yeah, it's natural selection. All right, goodbye." You know?
I think this is like an example of like they don't want to give even an inch, even in trivial cases like this. If they see an opportunity, they will deny it.
Right. Yes.
That's basically it. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Which is weird because on the one hand, you have like Michael Behe, who says, "Oh yes, I accept universal common descent," but like, and Behe is one of their main guys, and yet you will get vehement denial on from most intelligent design people regarding universal common ancestry. Most of them do not accept it. Meyer, for instance, is like the phylum is the created kind sort of thing. Others like
does he believe that chordates have a common ancestor?
Well, he says that. I don't know if he actually believes that, but he argues that each phylum is in essence a created kind. Like there is no different phyla don't share a common ancestor, but if you were to ask him, do humans share a common ancestor with the other apes? No, we don't.
They are different phylum. Didn't you know?
Right. Yeah, of course. Well, humans are special because we have souls and whatnot. And
the human phylum.
Yes, the human phylum. But then I would also be very intrigued to ask, like Stephen Meyer, for instance. Well, okay, do you accept that a carp and an elephant are the same phylum, for instance? Do they share a common ancestor that lived, 500 million years ago?
What an elephant?
Like a carp, a goldfish.
Oh, carp.
Would you say a goldfish and an elephant share a common ancestor? Would they accept that? Well, probably not, because they're not comfortable with, these things are very different, so they probably didn't share a common ancestor. So yeah, it's hide the ball. It's just hide the ball constantly. and fundamentally, most intelligent design proponents are no different than young Earth creationists functionally. They basically argue that
on an individual basis, perhaps not, but on the whole,
yeah. I mean, I'm sure you can find intelligent design proponents, or well, maybe you should just say like design proponents, whatever, who are not Christian theists, or even Abrahamic monotheists or whatever. Maybe they're part of some other group, or maybe they do think it was aliens, even though again I've never met anyone who actually argues that. But whatever. Maybe they do. Maybe someone does.
It's like the original people who were like writing the Of Pandas and People textbook, and also were behind the Discovery Institute as such. Like they know what they are doing, but then later, like new individuals were like, "Oh, no, it seems pretty interesting." Like, and they may be honest to those later individuals.
Right.
Jackson, I can give you one example at least, and I got this from a YouTube channel called Jackson Wheat, believe it or not. Because I did a show with On Ra last Tuesday, and believe it or not, in my recommendations, there was a show called On Ra Debates Mr. ID, and so I just had to watch that again. So remember how he called it interrelation?
Okay.
So he's an ID proponent who has made up his own shitty argument, which is called interrelation. So that things are related, but it's not evolution. It works the same, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
For people
Well, remember,
who want to
did-
lose their sanity, it's still on Jackson's channel. It's probably one of the worst things that we've ever done. Is
So that video was the highest or most watched video on my channel until it was overtaken by whale sex. I think it still occupies
Yes.
number 2 though, because he
Yeah,
drops.
I think it does. Yeah.
He drops eggs into
Yes.
tissue paper, and that's
Yeah.
intelligence. How
9
that's intelligence? You got us.
9 shits.
Yeah.
It was 9 shits.
Yeah, we really tortured Aaron with that, but I think Aaron got me back because he had me try his end of sanity sauce, and my face melted. So,
And
if
so
you've seen,
I did mention
if you've
mention it
seen-
to I did mention it to Aaron that I got it in my recommendations, and he did remember that particular.
I wouldn't
event.
remember it either. I'd probably memory hole it. Yeah, no, I don't blame him at all.
No. Aaron did remember it. He did remember it.
Oh, he
said,
did remember it.
Yes,
Oh,
he
okay.
said that was probably one of the dumbest persons that he ever talked to, and so yeah.
I memory hold.
It's also very
somebody.
sad because he thinks he is the new Einstein. From what I remember, he genuinely thinks he's the new Einstein. But
He's written
just
6 science books.
Yeah.
At least he calls it science.
Yeah,
But by the way, I did want to mention we usually have people from Brazil that we don't like in the chat. At least one particular individual. We have a different one, Jackson. He says he would like to come on and join the show sometime. He's a biology teacher. I think I saw somewhere
in the live chat.
In the live chat. Corroborando con ciencia.
Well, I
probably
think
butchering
saying,
this, but
well, I see he's talking, but okay.
So
anyway, all right.
I mean,
we can move on to Galapagos finches.
Yeah, if he wants to talk about something like that, I'll put my email address in the chat, and he can email me. So
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right.
We can keep going.
Let's continue.
Down to Galapagos finches. Woo!
Technically tanagers, but whatever.
Yeah, right. Yep, the Galapagos tanagers. Okay.
But tanagers are like the sister family to the the finches.
I don't think so. I don't think Thropidae and Fringillidae are sisters. But they're both passerines.
But that's still a huge group.
It is a very it's a very big group. I don't.
Yeah. How close are they? Like, I will just.
Let's find out.
Google.
Let's look. Emberizoidea. Okay, so they're okay. Nope. Okay, Thropidae is in a group called Emberizoidea, which Fringillidae is not in that. Let's go to Passarida. Is it in this group? Superfamily? Oh, I have no idea at this point. I'm gonna have to go the other way. Let's try Fringillidae. Fringillidae. Yep, that's what I meant. Finch. And let's see which superfamily they're in. They're in Passeroidea. Okay. Which is under. Wait. Oh, Passeroidea. Okay, wait. Hold on a sec. Let's go back. Okay, Passerida. Then which group was I just looking at? Passerida. Okay.
And they are even in different superfamilies.
Yeah, they're in different superfamilies. Yeah. Okay. So they're pretty distantly related. But they're all like little songbirds is basically what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's a little songbird. Okay. Yeah, they're passerines. Yeah. I know. Okay. All right. Anyway, moving on.
And they belong to the same suborder. Yeah, I think so.
Biology textbooks commonly cite the Galapagos finches as an example of an adaptive radiation. That's true. You could also cite like Drosophilas on Hawaii, or I don't know, lots of different examples. The Ensatina salamanders, Adaptive radiation, the supposed rapid diversification of species after entering an empty habitat or niche. Okay. According to the standard finch story about 14 million years ago, I don't think that's correct. A group of finches found their way from the South American mainland to the Galapagos Islands and diversified into about a dozen species that inhabit various habitats in the island group. Okay. The finches are often called a powerful example of natural selection in action. Aside from small differences in beak shape, size, and feeding habits, the finches are highly similar, and it can be difficult to tell them apart. Okay. And like, so what? When you say it can be difficult to tell them apart, for who or for whom? It's not that difficult for the researchers to tell them apart, right? Like you can tell Geospiza magnorostris from like, Geospiza fuliginosa or something like that, right? Like it'd be hard to confuse, or fortis. In a lot of cases, it's like hard to confuse them because they do look very different morphologically, because their beaks correlate with particular food sources.
I guess
yeah.
it's similar to saying like, oh, crocodiles and alligators are just I cannot tell them apart from each other. Like maybe something like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you could do that with a
Yeah.
lot of things. You could
If
say,
you,
oh, well, it can be difficult to tell them apart. Well, yeah, if you're not an expert on it, it can be. But
yeah.
if you are, then you can tell them apart. So what does it matter? Or frogs. Lots of frogs. Was it it was one of the Hyla.
Hmm?
Was it Calcaratus, fasciatus, or whatever? They're basically like a species. They're a species complex, and lots of the species they're what's called cryptic species. So they all look pretty much the same. Like their colors are more or less identical. The difference between the frogs is actually their song. So frogs often have different different pitch or different sound songs because that's how they differentiate each other. It's not always by sight, right? Especially not if you're far away from each other. So you sing really loud so you can attract somebody across the pond to you, right? But again, yeah, if you're a normal person, maybe you can't differentiate them. Okay, what does it matter? What does it matter if you can't?
And it reminds me of a very funny quote that Thomas Holtz made. Although I can't remember the quote verbatim, but he says if you go out in nature and you hear the songs, the beautiful songs of nature, it's basically all the animals crying out, desperate for having sex.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
They retain the ability to interbreed and produce fertile offspring. Not really. Sort of. Some of them do, but not all of them, because it's not just different species. There are different genera of finches on the islands too. There's Geospiza, Certhidia, Penaroloxius, Platyspiza. These are different genera. So it's not just different species. And there is a degree of interbreeding that can be allowed, but there are also prezygotic and postzygotic barriers to breeding in a lot of cases. And so for instance, there was a famous observation made by David Lack between Geospiza, I think it was Fortis and fuliginosa. And so basically these two finches, when they occur separately, their beak sizes overlap. But when they occur in the same area, their beak sizes basically diverge. So instead of having a very similar range, they go in opposite directions so that they don't interbreed with each other. So that is a barrier to reproduction.
Because if you're an individual who has a similar beak shape and size to a different species to other individuals of a different species, then you have to compete for the same resources, and then your fitness is lower than if you don't have to compete.
Right.
So that's why the differentiation, basically.
And the cool thing about that is when their beaks are different shapes, this results in producing different sounds in part, right? So their beak
Mhm.
size and shape affects the song that they make. So their songs are going to diverge with their morphology. So again, it's another pre-zygotic barrier to reproduction. So yeah. So yes, they can to some limited extent interbreed, but in most cases the hybrids are penalized for one reason or another. And when there are periods of stress, of ecological stress or environmental stress, like during the drought of 1987, all the hybrids were highly penalized. So because the reason was their morphology was intermediate between their parental species, so they could not do either niche well enough to survive, and they all died. Now there was an instance of like I think they called it Big Bird, where there were some hybrids, but the hybrids are all very or they're like it's an incestuous family tree basically. They're all interbreeding with each other to produce this new
Mhm.
species. So yeah, they're
So,
super
so
inbred.
you have the initial cross, and then after the cross, there's no admixture with the original parental species.
Yeah, it's
Right.
like it.
It's
Yeah, they're all very inbred. Yeah.
ding 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 ding.
Um, the small scale differences among the finch species do not demonstrate that natural selection can cause large scale evolutionary changes, such as the origin of new body plans. Nobody ever said that it could. Literally, no one ever said that. Nobody said that. No one's using the differentiation of the finches over the last like it's 2 to 3 million years. I'm pretty sure, not 14 million. Of the Galapagos tanagers to say that like amphibians evolved from fish. Nobody's saying that.
Sorry,
Everyone's
I
making
just
Alabama jokes in the side
yeah.
chat. Yeah. Well, fortunately, I live in Louisiana where that never happens. So anyway, um, field biologists Peter and Rosemary Grant found finches with larger beaks survived better during a drought as they were able to crack the tougher seeds that remained. Yeah. But when the drought ended, the average beak size in the finch population returned to normal, making this an example of oscillating change with no net evolutionary change. Yeah, over the course of like 2 years, what do you think? Like, what is the thinking here? That natural selection is going to drive like a new body plan over the course of 2 years? Like, what's the
Yeah.
thinking here?
Again, it's vague, but I guess they are like it's almost like they are expecting evolution to be progressive. It's always going to one direction, but never like uh, back and forward or
Right.
different things
And
happening.
if you
Yeah.
actually look at the cores, if you look at the like foraminifera and diatoms that are in like these cores, these sediment cores that researchers take, you see oscillation like back and forth.
Mhm.
Even when you have like directional change, it's still like it still varies. You still have these back and forths. Now it's in a direction, but they're still going back and forth. So it's not always just bigger next year, bigger the next year, bigger the next year, bigger the next year. No, it might be
Mhm.
bigger than 1 year, then smaller, then larger again, but it's like you're still going in the same way, right? You know what I mean? So, and that
Yeah.
happens.
It's like saying like, oh, when whales evolved, it's oscillating selection that just went back to the ocean. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's like the premise relies on a thing that is not even a thing. It's
Mhm.
not even applicable in evolution. Like
Mhm.
like the notion of bigger, better, superior, or such that it doesn't even apply. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
The
Right.
the
Exactly.
weird thing about this is that they try to infer that a drought, which might happen once every several years, would have
Mhm.
such an impact that would completely change the beak sizes of the birds, because
Mhm.
it's just 1 year. So probably
Right.
most of the beaks with the smaller beaks would still procreate and would still have offspring the next year.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the ones with the larger beaks would be able to feed their offspring better, so more of them would survive, but it's not going to take if it's just 1 year. You'll still have the smaller beaks. It's
Yeah, it's very silly. None of this makes any sense.
no, I mean you don't have to be a biologist to be able to figure out that doesn't make a dent in the population. One single drought, although it could kill
Yeah.
off an entire species if it's bad enough, if their food source disappears because of the drought. But otherwise, I don't see the argument in this.
Yeah, it's very silly. It's as RJ says, ideas want to admit all the dots, but never seem to connect any of them. Yeah, exactly right. It's just yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, it's just they're like, oh yeah, natural selection happens, but it's just in a circle. There's one other like implication of this argument that I find kind of curious. And it seems like they're trying to argue that speciation doesn't happen. Because they're saying it's only oscillating selection. Like, yeah, they get larger, but then they get smaller again. So they go oscillating around this mean. And that's interesting to me because it seems like they're trying to say, because they say supposed diversification. So do they think all the finches are the same species? Because we have the genomes of at least, or the tanagers, we have the genomes of at least several of the Galapagos tanagers, and they are very obviously not the same species, right? Like I said, there are different genera of them. And so if you want to argue that these guys are the same species, you would also have to argue like that lots of other organisms are the same species. You're like a super lumper, you know? Like
They're all
yeah,
the same kind, Jackson. You know this.
Of course, and I mean that's like ultimately what it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're just the same kind. Yeah.
But that's why
the Jackson. Like somebody has a long question in the live chat, or do you want to answer that? Or
I don't know it. Scholarships. It's been a long time since I looked at scholarships. I don't know.
He's saying he's saying that like there's like a company called Essential Oil, and and they are seeking somebody for a scholarship, giving them money to write a favorable review of their product. So basically, a huge conflict of interest in the research. That's what they are saying. And I like if you're, this is my opinion, if you're serious about getting into academia, you should not be associated with that kind of research. To write something for a company for money, that's a huge conflict of interest.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I wouldn't do it. Sorry, couldn't be me.
Yeah.
All right. We can keep on scrolling down. Or is that it? Is that the end of it, or is there more? Oh boy, microevolution versus macroevolution, our favorite.
Yes, there we go.
Our
big
favorite
question. Will they define their terms? Let's find out next time on Jackson Reed.
Microevolution.
Next time is right now.
Next time is right this instant. Yep. Microevolution generally refers to small scale changes within an existing species. Again, doesn't really mean anything. Does not mean anything. What is a small scale change? Give us something that is measurable. Something, please, anything. And conversely, macroevolution refers to large scale changes, including the evolution of higher taxa and fundamentally new biological features. Again, none of these words mean anything. They have not defined anything in terms of like concrete words. What is a small scale change? What is a large scale change? What's a higher taxon? What is a fundamentally new biological feature? What do any of these terms mean? Can anybody give me a definition, please? I'm begging you.
Like
Go ahead.
It reminds me of a quote from like a very bad movie, like the live action Cat in the Hat show.
Oh, what are
Like
you
there
talking
was
about?
like
That was
a
a great movie.
but there was like this one scene when a goldfish starts talking and the cat is like, yeah, he's talking, but is he really saying anything? No.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Um.
Yeah.
Yeah. None of these words mean anything. Um. What do they want? Like, because on the one hand, when they say higher taxa, like genus is a higher taxon than species is. I remember we just talked about the Galapagos finches, the Galapagos tanagers. There are multiple genera of Galapagos tanager. So, wouldn't you say that like that's macroevolution by that definition? Because we have a higher taxon or taxa, there's multiple genera that have originated. I would say by that definition, macroevolution has occurred. But also fundamentally new biological features. At the same time, though, I would say, well, when I think fundamentally new, well, I don't know. I can't think of anything in biology that's fundamentally new, right? What would that mean? What would that encompass? Because everything in biology is like related to something else. Fingers, in tetrapods, yeah, they're new, but they're built on genetic systems that pre-existed and bones that pre-existed. They didn't come out of nowhere. You know what I mean? I don't know. Does that make
I,
sense?
Yeah.
it's really like like you can split hairs over this on anything. Like you can say, oh, I made a new building. Well, did you construct a new building? Like where did you get the materials from? Like you
Right.
get it from the ground, right? Like you can do this for everything. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not really new because the concrete is made from like atoms that existed previously, so it's not really new. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
What
exactly. Yeah, that's Nini hits the nail on the head. Like it's almost like they want to see something ex nihilo.
Yes,
One-
yeah,
Basically.
Smitty's right.
Yeah.
one of my favorite examples for this is the wing of the penguin. When the penguin's in the water, it's a fin, but it's still a wing. So is this fundamentally new? Because it's clearly a fin. They use it as a fin, as fish use them, as whales use them. So is this fundamentally new, or is it still a wing? You tell me. Because they can't fly, so it's no longer a wing. Yet it is a
to
wing.
make an apple pie from scratch, you must first invent the universe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a good example. Anything exapted is not new, to them. When we did the lungfish's tail, we talk about the fin. The bones in our arms were in fish before us.
Mhm.
They were in Tiktaalik and Panderichthes and Eusynopteron and Sauropterus and Osteolepis. All these fish, these like very obviously fishy guys, and they have arm bones just like we do. They have a humerus, a radia, an ulna, and then all the metacarpals.
Yeah. I can also reference something that I discussed in like the big talk that we did. Sorry. I sorry.
No, sorry, I corrected myself. You were saying?
No. I thought you were finishing first. So
no, I misspoke. I meant carpals.
All right.
But you were saying.
All right. But like referencing about something that I talked about in the about body plans and gene regulatory networks. You remember that? Like,
yeah,
it's like I discussed something about the Turing mechanism where you have a reaction diffusion system with. And from that, you can get various patterns. You can, and like the classical examples are like color patterns on fur, like the cheetah spots or the zebra stripes, such. And when you have a change in the rate at which the chemical inducers are involved are changed, like like maybe something changes and the inhibitor is increasingly inhibitory or something like that, you get a very, very different pattern from that. So from one level you can say, oh, a very different pattern has emerged, but at the mechanisms, the underlying mechanisms, very little has changed.
Right.
Yeah, so somebody might say like, oh, those are just spots and stripes, but curiously, the transition from fin rays to digits involved exactly this. They involved in the Turing system.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But is it fundamentally new? I don't know.
I guess it's
like you always say.
It depends on what level you look at it. Like at the morphological level, perhaps, but at the underlying developmental mechanisms, then no.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. You can, or the creationist or whomever can always pull out more arbitrary. No, it's not for this reason. Stuff at any point. They always do that because if you ever force them, like back them into a corner, make them give you a definition of something, they know that if they give you a definition, you might meet it, and then they have to acknowledge something they don't want to, and that's a big problem for them, and it's really funny when that happens. Okay,
it's hard to come up with clear definitions if you have no evidence for your argument, Jackson. That's just how that works, and then you have to be vague in order to try and convince people to believe you.
Yeah.
It's how conspiracy theories work.
Yeah, that's true. Number C. Proponents of Darwinism often pull a bait and switch. If that's not the pot calling the kettle black, I don't know what is. How do you say, before even finishing the sentence, how do you say Darwinism and then say they're pulling the bait and switch? You're pulling a bait and switch by calling evolution Darwinism. Like, oh my gosh, how do they write this with a straight face?
I think it's more subtle. Like they like the term Darwinism because when they can associate an entire field with one person, then all they need to do is just discredit that one person to discredit the whole field. So they make the field look smaller than it really is. Yeah. That's the point. That's the point of Darwinism to them. Like to us, the term Darwinism is just a historical term that is only applicable at some period of the progress in this field of study. But to them, it's a very different usage.
Yeah, and also if they can pin it back to just Darwin, then you don't have the entire scientific community who has backed the findings of Darwin in the most incredible ways, leading up to genetics that we have now in order to check it. If you can, and if you can push it back to what Darwin found, then it's a lot easier to pick apart, because then you can just discard all the evidence that we've found since Darwin made this discovery, or at least popularized it.
Concluding that small-scale changes in the colors of moths or the sizes of finch beaks demonstrate macroevolution, and that fundamentally new types of organisms can evolve, when in fact only microevolution has occurred. Again, no explanation of what a small-scale change is, or a large-scale change, or fundamentally new biological features. And the point of these examples, which they agreed with, is that natural selection happens. They agreed natural selection happens. Don't let them pull the wool over your eyes. They agreed with it. They're just saying, oh, well, it doesn't do much. Science must be based upon empirical data, not unwarranted extrapolation. Again, really? How do you write that with a straight face? Observed examples of natural selection in action provide evidence of small scale rather than large scale evolutionary change. Yeah, no one said otherwise. The fact that finch beak sizes, moth colors, exaggerated embryo drawings, and other icons of evolution are so weak, yet so commonly used, to tell us something. If evolutionary biologists had better evidence, we would know about it. Okay, there's a lot to unpack in that sense. Okay, remember
they should have replaced the embryo drawings with micro photographs, and then they can say, "Oh, exaggerated micro photographs."
Right, but okay. but the finch beak sizes and the moth colors are examples of natural selection. Now, we literally witnessed the moth color changes. We did not directly witness the finch beak changes, right? But we know that, or well, we have evidence that allows us to infer that all the Galapagos tanagers share a common ancestor and that they differentiated on these islands due to different selective pressures, right, for different niches, right? So we have genetic evidence in favor of that. We can see small scale changes in the size of beaks. Again, or we can see small scale like what is it, like half a millimeter or something like that was the difference between like the drought beak and the non-drought beak or something like that. So yes, you have these very these changes, these small scale changes in finch beak size. But again, it's about observing natural selection. No one's arguing that based on this observation that therefore all of life shares a common ancestor. No one's making that argument.
And now I'm curious, Jackson,
that's
because
what creationists say.
I'm curious because I don't know if you already had it made or if I was the one who requested it for you to make. The Italian wall lizard, that is an observed evolutionary process where it did had what they would call significant different body plans because they had to adapt to a completely new food source.
Well, and the argument that creationists kind of came up with to discredit that one was they said, oh well, these the cecal valve doesn't, like, if you change their diet back, the cecal valve also disappears, and it's not genetic, it's based on the environment. Which, I mean, okay,
if it's based on the environment being natural selection, they're if it's based on the environment, then it would be natural selection, right?
Well, in this case, it's not really natural selection yet. It's more like you have like environmentally induced changes. But if these changes were somehow like codified into the genes, then they could be selected for. So like, what is it? Genetic accommodationism. So, or like a genetic assimilation and accommodation. So basically, you have genes which allow you to produce a range of phenotypes, right? And then you can have natural selection sort of decrease the range of potential phenotypes. And so you eventually just kind of end up with just the one phenotype arising. So that can happen. And maybe in this case, it might happen given time. But I mean, I think it was an interesting example. I like to point, of course, to the marbled crawfish as my favorite example of speciation, because it was a genome duplication. So they went from being diploid, having two genome copies, to being triploid, because you had an egg cell. So you had an ovum that did not it had both copies. It wasn't haploid. And so then that combined with a sperm cell, and that produced a triploid individual. And that triploid individual was parthenogenetic. So by the normal species definition that we typically use, which is, being able to interbreed and produce fertile offspring, per that definition, the marbled crawfish is no longer a member of the parental species, which was Procambarus phallax. And indeed, that's why it was called Procambarus virginalis. So that's an example I like to use.
Are they all clones, or do they still undergo meiosis during?
No, they're all clones. They're all the Procambarus virginalis are all parthenogenetic. Yeah.
Like I've heard, they had also the whiptail lizards, right? But they do undergo meiosis and they like self-fertilize or something. Like it's very weird, but they still undergo recombination in some way. But not the marbled crayfish. They don't have recombination anymore.
Nope.
or do they?
No,
Hmm.
no. As far as I'm aware, they're just
All right.
doing clonal reproduction. As far as I'm aware,
All right.
but yeah. So, which I think is it's pretty cool. But the
Mhm.
point of this is
One might say neat.
it's neat, very neat.
Mhm.
The point of the examples with natural selection are that natural selection leads to changes, right? You have genetic changes, which can then be acted upon by the environment, and then so you have that natural selection or sexual selection, and then these can lead over time to differences between populations. And indeed, that has been shown with there are selection experiments where the thing that these researchers started with is different from the end product, right? So they continually selected for, flies who eat one particular type of food versus flies who eat a different type, and then you bring them together after several generations, and suddenly, they can't interbreed anymore. Um, Stuff like that happens. It's interesting though that the ID proponents here are acting like the changes in the finch beak sizes and the moth colors and the heckle embryo drawings, like it's kind of interesting they're arguing that this is the only evidence that exists for evolution, and that's just a lie, right? Like these are again, these aren't evidence for common ancestry. Well, the embryo drawings you would say are evidence for common ancestry among vertebrates, but the moths and the tanagers are not evidence for common ancestry. They're evidence for natural selection.
Mhm.
And that's the difference. And they're conflating these. Again, they're pulling a bait and switch, if you will, to
Yeah.
pretend like
Ironically. Yeah.
ironic, isn't it? Yeah, to pretend as though there isn't any actual evidence. If I were, to say, well, what is the evidence for common ancestry? I would say, yeah, one, similarities in embryos across different clades. Also, the fossil record, right? Transitional fossils, the pattern of homology among different
Mhm.
organisms. So you have this nested hierarchical pattern. Really, the nested hierarchical pattern is like the big thing, right? It's that you
Yeah.
have embryological similarities and morphological similarities and genetic similarities and fossil, transitional fossils, and they all fit into the same pattern. They all have the same pattern.
Yeah.
If things were designed, it's not to say they couldn't have that pattern. Sure, they could, but there's no reason for that to be the one pattern. Humans, which are so far the only intelligent designers we're aware of, don't build anything in nested hierarchies. Nothing. There is nothing we build that is that you can like divide into nested hierarchies, which should tell you
Like not
something,
not
right?
not in a at least not like of course you can make something on purpose to an hierarchy by design, of course, like
Yeah.
but it's not like we are constrained to do it this
Right.
way. Yeah.
Cars, computers, televisions, airplanes, whatever you can think of, it was not designed in a nested hierarchical fashion. It was not. It was
Mhm.
just, it was,
Yeah.
we're going to make some design that works, and then we're going to improve on that later in different ways and add, different things. But there's no reason that, like, you also don't have to have all the parts of like the original thing in the later
Yeah.
examples. If you can completely redo everything about it except for like whatever little core thing there is or whatever, uh you know you don't have to design anything in a nested hierarchical pattern, and that's the point. So, but anyway, okay, are we ready for
I think
is that it is that the end of this
yeah,
chapter?
that's the end of the
Haha.
chapter. So
So well, now we
chapter
have to go to
15. Then we have to
yeah.
there we go.
Okay. All
There we are.
right. Oh boy. Explain how the abrupt appearance of new organisms in the fossil record challenges Darwinian evolution and points to design. Oh boy. Yay. Punctuated equilibrium again. Woo. Yay. Do you think the fossil evidence supports Darwinian evolution? Learning objectives. I can explain how Darwin's theory of evolution via descent with modification requires that organisms evolve gradually and predicts that a large number of intermediate or transitional forms have existed. Well, lucky for them, they do. I can explain that when transitional forms weren't found, Darwin conceded that this was a serious challenge to his theory, but then suggested that these transitional fossils were missing because the geological record was incomplete. Okay, so
And he was right about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
in part, yeah, he was right. The fossil record is imperfect. Darwin did actually,
especially in his time. Like in his time,
yes,
like paleontology was just getting off the ground almost. Like, remember, it was in his lifetime when the first dinosaurs were described.
yes,
It was
right.
in his lifetime.
But also, that's not what the artifact hypothesis is. That's not.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
The artifact hypothesis is a specific hypothesis regarding like the Cambrian explosion. It is not the artifact hypothesis. Not simply say that the fossil record is incomplete. We know that the fossil record is incomplete. We know this for a fact. I have never seen a single person argue the opposite. I have never met a creationist who is willing to defend the proposition that the fossil record is complete. Not one, ever. Because everyone knows
any new discovery will say that they are wrong. They were wrong.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
You would have to argue, for instance, that there were only 13 Archaeopteryx specimen or individuals in existence. You would have to take that position because that's the only number we know about, right? Like, good luck. Hats off to you. Good luck with that one. Or
total population of T-Rex ever about 12 or something. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
exactly. Yeah. Good luck.
keep in mind, Jackson, that they will still come up with the argument that we didn't have the complete skeleton of Lucy, which
right.
we have multiple skeletons of that particular species in different ages, different sexes. We have that, and yet they keep on harping, but you didn't have all the bones, and so therefore you couldn't. The feet were missing, as I recall. So those were just taken from humans as human feet to make it more human, when in fact we do have feet of afferences. And they still don't acknowledge that. They keep on harping Lucy being the only skeleton that we have. And that's a level of dishonesty that I can't understand.
Yeah, I also don't understand it. What I'm trying to find right now is I'm drawing a blank right now. I'm forgetting what the original artifact hypothesis was. I know we've talked about it before.
Was it about the like the ancestors were living in an environment where there would have been no fossil preservation or something?
Maybe something like that. If you look up artifact hypothesis, the only thing you'll find is a bunch of creationists. They all you just find creationists. Yeah, maybe that was it. Anyway. But yeah.
I see. I see evolution news. ID the future.
Yeah.
And I see also.
It's just all creationists.
Go to Beckley Twitter account.
Which should tell you something. Like, is artifact hypothesis something that's actually used by scientists? Doesn't really look like it. Anyway, I can explain that many paleontologists recognize that missing transitional fossils are not the product of an incomplete geological record, but rather that there are real gaps between major taxonomic categories and that those gaps are unlikely to be filled by future investigations. How would you do that?
Yeah, how would you know that?
How exactly would you do that? How would you know that?
I'm now reading the evolution news article even if you call it an article, just a blog.
Blog
It
post.
says, it says right here, the most popular attempt to resolve the discrepancy is the so-called artifact hypothesis, which proposes that Cambrian animal phyla had ancestors, but that those ancestors either left no fossil record or have not yet been found because of the incompleteness of the fossil record. So it basically is just incompleteness of the fossil record in this case. They define it as just being complete.
Yeah.
Or never left. Either way, they either never left the fossil record or they just haven't been found. That's the, according to them, that is the artifact hypothesis.
I'm pretty sure the artifact hypothesis, I've heard it described as something different. And I'm drawing a blank. Jeez, I can't remember now. Anyway, but yeah, okay. So there are real gaps, and at those gaps, so they're making a prediction that we would never find an organism that exists between these two clades. Which, again, good luck with that. I mean, you're free to do that, I guess, but like, you put yourself in a dangerous position, because if that thing is ever found, if something is ever found which bridges that gap, then you have to admit that you're wrong.
No, Jackson.
And they're not going to do that.
No, they're not going to admit they're wrong because now we have two gaps. You know this.
Right. Exactly. That's right. Yeah, we have every single thing is another gap. Yep.
Yeah,
Dr.
I mean,
Banjo.
if you got another fossil that fits in between two other fossils, now you have two brand new gaps to fill. That's how they do it every single time. No matter which creationist you talk to, it'll eventually come up.
Yeah. I can explain that the fossil record shows a pattern of extinctions, sudden disappearance of organisms, and explosions, sudden appearance of new types of organisms, rather than a series of transitional fossils showing gradual change from one species to the next. I understand that the main patterns in the fossil record, so they acknowledge that there is gradual evolution in the fossil record? Okay. In the fossil record contradict the predictions of Darwinian evolution. Okay. I can describe the Cambrian explosion as a major event in the history of life, roughly 530 million years ago, that occurred in a period of time no more than 5 to 10 million years. Jesus.
Yeah, it's the same article they are referencing as always. Like is this particular article? I think it's
Bowring like 93, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Bowring 1993 Bowring, and if you look up the paper, it describes two phases: a slow buildup of like what is a slow buildup of 14 million years, and that slow buildup was followed by an exponential increase in diversity for about 5 to 6 million years. So in total, with the slow buildup and the exponential increase pattern, it's 20 million years. But of course, they want to focus on the exponential increase, and that's how they narrow it down to 5 to 10 million years. But then, there's also the thing about how they date a particular boundary. I think the boundary they accept an age of 525 million years for the Atabaninian-Potamian boundary, but today that boundary is now dated to 560 million years. So if you correct for the new dates, the exponential increase is now 14 million years long. So together with the exponential increase, the total diversification event from both slow build-up and exponential is 28 million years in total.
Yeah.
So it gets ridiculous when they just they just cherry pick the smallest date they can find in this paper. They're like ignoring the slow build-up, ignoring what happened before, just focus on one part of the story, and then even then, they are out of date. Even then, always out of date.
Always out of date. Yep. By now it's been 30 years that they are out of date, or whatever. 30 years since that first paper came out. Yeah. I can explain that evolutionary scientists have attempted to explain the absence of transitional fossils in the Cambrian explosion by postulating that Precambrian fossils were too small or too soft-bodied to have been preserved, and I evaluate why this explanation is problematic. Because small and soft-bodied fossils are abundant? That's a lie. In the Cambrian explosion, yes. And are found in Precambrian strata. Okay. So
Well,
what they're
it's
doing is they're
abundant.
saying
Yeah.
well, they're
Sorry,
not
go. Sorry,
abundant
sorry.
in Precambrian strata though. They're
Yeah.
the soft-bodied fossils are not abundant in Precambrian strata. Yes, there are some, but they're not abundant. That's a lie.
But
You were
it's
saying?
also the case that these soft-bodied fossils are only abundant in particular Lagerstätten.
Yes.
Only then they are abundant. Yeah.
Right, and we don't have those like Burgess shale type deposits in the Precambrian. There are very few
Yeah.
of them. That, yeah, it's not the same type of preservation in the Precambrian. The major Precambrian organisms, like in the Ediacara Hills, it's not the same as like what you find in the Burgess shale deposits up in Canada. Right, it's not the same. They're deposited in these different environments. There's different depositional modes. It's very different. Also, look at this. They acknowledge the existence of Precambrian sponge embryo fossils. Okay, so they're talking about the Duchanteau formation, which very weird because that's very odd. It's very odd that they are acknowledging, or I guess background. Okay, background. Back in 1998, Xiao et al. Described these what are possibly embryos from the from this Ediacaran formation called the Duchanteau shale. It's like
That's even before the Avalon. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
I think so.
Yeah, like early Ediacaran or something like that. It goes for a little while. Anyway, it turns out some of those embryos are not embryos. They are they describe them as acritarchs, so they're probably not animals. They're probably eukaryotes of some other affinity.
Well,
Some of them,
I have seen. Yeah, I've seen that some of them. Yeah, are very highly likely candidates.
yes,
Yeah.
some of them are holozoans and probably animals. And actually, when we did the Professor Dave videos on this, because we covered this topic, so we mentioned in the first one, the Meyer debunk, we mentioned the Duchanteau embryos, quote quote. And then Gunter Beckley responded with, aha, but none of them are actually animal embryos. And he ignored the actual examples we pulled up. Or he picked one which was a possible and it probably isn't an animal. And he said, aha, I gotcha. But he didn't mention any of the other ones.
It's the Caviaspera or something.
I think so. Yeah, I think it was Caviaspera. Yeah. But he mentioned that one, but he ignored all the other examples we gave. And it's like very odd that you would pick one out of the like 5 that we mentioned and say, aha, I gotcha. You know, I wonder if I can find it. I may be able to find exactly, but suffice it to say, it's very odd that they in this are saying we're okay with those being sponge embryos because he wasn't. Gunter Beckley was not okay with it. He was like, no, they're all like eukaryotes of some other affinity. Not that any of those are sponges. So that's very weird to me. It's very weird. They're not keeping the lore straight. You know what I mean? It's they're sorry, I'm trying to find it. I'm pretty sure I can oh, I thought I had it somewhere. Unless I passed it by accident.
This material was written by Casey Luskin, right? Like this.
Yeah, which is also strange because they're pretty buddy with each other. Luskin and Beckley, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, it'd be very odd to me if. No, I must have missed it. I must have just passed it at some point because I wrote. There was so much stuff that I wrote for that stupid script. It really fried my brain to write that. You guys, I can't even tell you. Was it in this one?
It is a long video for
It was a very long
that
video.
Dave does. Yeah.
Anyway, somewhere. Yeah, anyway, we talk about it in the Beckley debunk, how he brings up the embryos and says, no, they're not actually embryos, they're acrotarchs. And which
It's
technically
also
yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I cut you off. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. I'm still trying to find it. I'm still trying to find the thing. You say your thing.
Like I was just like pointing out that these are embryos, and they are like very particular preservation is phosphatized, right?
Right. Yeah.
They are phosphatized. So, and this particular preservation doesn't apparently preserve the adult. So it's really unfortunate because we just don't know what the like the community would have looked like during that time. Maybe they would have looked like something similar to what we'll see in the Avalon, or maybe entirely different. We just don't know what the community would have looked like. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. Okay.
Yeah.
So here I'm quoting directly from the script. Beckley says that the embryos from the Duchanteau shale don't matter, and that the researchers are simply wrong about the embryos' affinities because of reasons. He literally gives no reasons at all for declaring the authors wrong. Beckley points to a recent paper that argues at least Megasphaera is a protist, and they might be right. I mentioned that the embryos have been argued to be protists. The debate is ongoing. Okay. No, I thought I wrote something more recently about it. Anyway, it was only one of them. Megasphaera was the only one that is probably a protist. All the other ones I mentioned, like Caviosphera, were
Caviosphera is probably a highly likely candidate as an animal, but Megasphaera probably not.
Yeah. So Caviosphera is one of those, which is probably an animal. So yeah, exactly. But again, it's really weird. It's really weird to me that they're not like, there's no crosstalk. It's are there animals in the Precambrian or aren't there? You guys got to make up your mind before you come over and try to argue with us. Sorry, that took a lot longer than I thought. I can list other examples of explosions in the fossil record, such as fish.
Oh, you skipped the one line in the previous.
Though the Precambrian fossils are not thought to be the ancestors of the Cambrian phyla. No, wrong.
Like direct ancestors, like of course we cannot tell always that whether something is a direct ancestor, but what we find is still what we expect. Like we expect to see bilaterians,
right?
Like the general classification of many phyla, like arthropods are bilaterians, chordates are bilaterians, cephalopods are bilaterians. So we may not be able to see the I think arthropods is inferred to have actually originated in the Cambrian, right? Like the crown group
or at
of
least,
arthropods.
At least Euarthropoda,
Yeah. So we don't expect if that hypothesis is right, we shouldn't expect to see arthropods in the Precambrian, but we would expect to see like generalized bilaterians, like worm-like things, basically. And we do see worm-like things in the Precambrian.
What do we see based on current phylogenies? What do we see? The earliest evidence of animals is the sponge steranes from Oman, which dates like 650 million years ago, something like that. So sponges are the earliest animals we find in the fossil record. Following that, we find fractal animals like Charnia, and
they are argued to have been eumetazoans because it's a very convincing argument that they say that these fractal animals or fractal organisms have a very consistent way of development, which is only seen in eumetazoans, but they are not seen in like plants and fungi. They have very variable way of growth patterns, but these have a very consistent growth patterns only seen in animals or eumetazoans specifically.
Exactly. So we have sponges, which are the most basally derived animal, or basally derived with respect to everything else, all the other animals. Then we have
the eumetazoans.
basally derived with respect to
animals.
Then we have
You have
stem
animals. Oh,
eumetazoans,
sorry. Yeah.
and then you have crown eumetazoa. So then you have like jellyfish or you have cnidarians, and you have stem bilaterians that show
Mhm.
up in the Ediacaran. Then you have crown bilaterians, which show up, and then as you cross over into the Cambrian, you get a radiation of crown bilaterian groups. So you get very early, very primitive crown bilaterians in the terminal Ediacaran, and then you
Yeah.
get suddenly this big radiation of bilaterians, and that's like exactly what we expect on evolution. That is exactly what we expect. So, like, what do you want? That's perfect. I mean, it's basically perfect. It's kind of amazing.
I would say perfect. Like
You don't
it,
okay, we don't have
it's
every single
yeah,
fossil, but we have
yeah.
a really good transit, or like a set, right? We have stratigraphy matching phylogeny
Yes.
really
Yeah.
well in this case, even
Yeah.
in the soft-bodied animals.
We expect to find the earliest animals. We do. We expect to find the earliest eumetazoans. We do. We expect
Hmm.
to find the earliest bilaterians. We do.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So fish, no. Okay, we have what? Hycoichthyes? Are they just gonna say Hycoichthyes is just a fish? Please tell me they say Hycoichthyes is just a fish. I would love to see that. Non-flowering plants. Okay. So here's the thing about non-flowering plants, like by which they mean, I guess, just all other embryophytes. I guess. Um, Embryophytes originated in, or like we find stem embryophytes in the Cambrian. Like there are moss-like algae that we find in the Cambrian, and then in the Ordovician you find the first land plants. So that again, that seems pretty phylogeny matching stratigraphy to me. Flowering plants are a little bit more complicated. There has been quite a bit
Yes.
of controversy over them. However, I think that's starting to clear up. From what I've seen, like the Benetitales, Gigantotariales, things like that, all these guys are starting to fit into the angiosperm like stem group. And
Yeah.
there was a paper that we cited in the
Mhm.
Professor Dave video where we talked about this. What were you saying?
Yeah, there were some recent papers that described these as like very good candidates for like stem and angiosperms. Yeah.
Right. So all these
Yeah.
different guys, Benetitales, Gigantotariales, Pentoxylales, all these guys are part of the stem group. None of them is like the direct ancestor of flowering plants, but they're all different members of the stem group. So yeah, so we're starting to get a better picture in that regard. It's not perfect yet, but we're getting there. It's getting closer. Mammals. Throw back to that time Stephen Meyer said mammals originated in the Eocene. I mean, you that was a goof. It was a goof up. Birds. I'm sure
Really?
they're gonna. I will bet.
Really?
I will bet money. I bet money right now. They're gonna say the fiducia temporal paradox. It's
Oh
their
no.
one
Yeah.
argument. That is the one argument intelligent design people have on birds. That's it. They literally don't have any other arguments. It's just that one. And our genus Homo. Really? Homo. Now, what's funny to me about the genus Homo is that young Earth creationists like Todd Wood, Paleologos, who we had on this channel, Kurt Wise, David Kavanaugh, they actually lumped in Australopithecus sediba with Homo. So, like, what do you mean? What do you mean an explosive origin? What does that mean? We know what genus Homo is descended from, and Homo does not have any features that Australopiths didn't already have. So, what do you mean? Maybe we'll find out. I don't know. Maybe they'll tell us.
Again, it's again also undefined of what, like, how fast does something need to be considered too fast to them.
Right.
So Again, unspecified.
Yep, unspecified. I can explain how scientists like Stephen Jay Gould have attempted to account for the absence of transitional forms. Again, a lie. By invoking punctuated equilibrium, where evolution occurs in small populations over short periods of time, too rapid for transitional forms to be fossilized, interspersed by long periods of little change called stasis. That's not even. I mean,
we have
like
made a video about that. Yeah,
yeah,
on stasis, right?
Yeah, we did a video on stasis. Like, we talked about this when Deflate tried to describe how punctuated equilibrium happens. He did a really weird job. Like, yes and no.
That's only regarding species to species transition mostly. It doesn't address
Right.
like higher, larger groups. It doesn't address those.
Gould and Eldridge specifically state in their earliest papers on punctuated equilibrium that it is specifically about speciation. It is not about like the fish to tetrapod transition. That's not what it's about. It is about how you go from species A to species B. That's it. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Now, there are other aspects, and I'm sometimes we have Zach BioNerd in here, and he could call me out on that. There are other aspects of punctuated equilibrium that were incorporated into the overall like theory that they didn't necessarily need. Things like rights rule and species selection, which happen, but like they don't have to happen for punctuated equilibrium to be true, right? You can have punctuated equilibrium without those things. Another thing that was also popular with punctuated equilibrium was like having big chromosomal changes in these small populations. And that was part of how you could have these rapid adaptations. Again, you don't need that. You don't have to have it for punctuated equilibrium to be true. It's not necessary. Anyway. Okay. We're ready to keep going?
Yep.
All right. Oh, there are so many objectives. These guys don't know how to write objectives, or they don't know how to write chapters. One of the two.
They don't know how to write.
They don't know how to write. Yeah, I should have just stopped there. I can identify problems with punctuated equilibrium. Wait, so punctuated equilibrium isn't true? Okay. Including it requires too much. It requires too much generation.
How much is too much? How much is too quickly?
Or no, hold on. I can't see. It's kind of. Hold on. Let me move my mouse. What does that say? It requires too much genetic change.
Genetic change.
Genetic change. Okay, sorry, I couldn't see it. Okay, I couldn't see it on my screen. Okay, thank you. Genetic change too quickly. It compresses the vast majority of evolutionary change into small populations that lived over short periods of time, thereby affording too few opportunities for beneficial mutations to arise. And 3, it seems more like an excuse for the lack of transitional fossils than a testable theory. Wow. Again, pot calling the kettle black. I love that. It seems like more of an excuse. Like, you can just feel the vitriol in that sentence when they wrote it. You can just feel it. They're not even attempting to be like scientific and rigorous here. They're not even. The veil has dropped. I can explain how scientists.
Oh, so one point I can make in about number 2 here.
Okay.
Is that like when they say that during punctuation, when you have a small population go into a new area or something, like that's how punctuation occurs according to this, according to Gould. And they say that, oh, here you have too few opportunities for beneficial mutations to arise. But that's completely missed the point. It's not like that beneficial mutations tend to arise more often in these small populations. Is that the mutations that already were present in the population are now more likely to be fixed with these small population sizes.
Right.
So they are also completely misunderstanding in this regard as well.
No, not creationist misunderstanding an evolutionary process. No. Yeah, you're totally right. I can explain how scientists in the field of evolutionary developmental biology, or Evodevo, have attempted to explain how large-scale changes to a body plan could arise rapidly through mutations in the genes controlling an organism's development, Hox or homeobox genes.
Hey, we discussed that before.
We sure did, yeah. I can identify the problems of evolutionary developmental biology, Evodevo. Just use one or the other. You don't have to write both every time. As mutations in the developmental genes are typically lethal. Okay. Okay, wait. Okay,
Again,
so for if
the
it's typically lethal, that does not mean it is always lethal. Like that can be perfectly true, but if you have a large enough population size, like with, I don't know, arthropods, for instance, then something that is typically lethal could be beneficial, right?
Mhm.
I don't know. Mutations in developmental genes cannot produce new body parts, but can only rearrange parts that are already present. Very interesting. Very interesting. So, for instance, if we were to point out, the fact that velvet worms and tardigrades and arthropods and even annelids have the same Hox genes, but that they're used for different purposes, does that count as a new large scale change, or is that just small scale changes? I don't know. I do not know.
Only
It's
God
just
knows.
rearranging parts that already existed, right? That's all it
Yeah,
is. Okay. Known examples of Evodevo mutations caused loss rather than gain of function.
that's
Well,
not
here's an
true.
example. Do what?
Oh, that's not true. I was saying, yeah.
Right. The experiment with abdominal A and B or what was it, isopods.
Mhm.
Oh, majestic payback for $5. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Boss. Mhm.
They so they took what was it? They took an amphipod and they silenced abdominal, I think it was abdominal B, and that caused the amphipod to express its hind legs like those of isopods, like they all point in the same direction.
Mhm.
So if you go the other way, if you imagine that the original was the isopod, all the legs point in the same direction. Well, the mutation, conferring the effects of abdominal B, would cause it to, like, the legs would point in the opposite direction. Now, would you say that's a gain? Maybe. I don't think it's a loss, certainly, but I'm not sure if I'd say it's a gain. Uh,
Mhm.
but again, like the differences between arthropod clades are largely like Hox gene related, right? It's how you
Yeah. Yes.
use,
Especially the crustaceans. Yeah.
yeah, it's how you use, uh, like your mouth parts or your walking legs, right? You just differentiate the things that all arthropods share, but in these vastly different ways. So, like, you know, uh,
And there
spiders.
was one example, like in the talk that we did a few weeks ago in
Hmm.
the body plans and the gene regulatory networks.
Yeah.
Like I brought up one example, like also in crustaceans, where a shift in the expression of one particular homeobox gene caused the crustaceans to have a new feeding appendage.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, for chelicerates, the chelicerae are claws originally. They were small grabbing claws, like what
Oh
horseshoe
yeah. Yeah.
crabs have on their underside.
Hmm.
So they have the little grabbing claws because they're chelicerates. Also, the daddy longlegs, which are not spiders, they're opiliones. They also
Hmm.
have little tiny grasping claws, or those could be very big grasping claws, like in scorpions, uh, or they could be like syringes, like in spiders. But it's the same structure for all of these. It's
Yeah.
all the same
Oh,
structure.
those spiders. Yeah, spiders lost like one half of the
Right.
claw, basically. So they
Hmm.
only have like the like one side of the claw, and they cannot pinch anymore.
Right.
They can only like they can only pull down their half claws, and basically they look like fangs right now, but they actually like
Hmm.
they are modified claws
Yeah. Right.
with
Exactly.
syringes. Yeah,
You think
yeah,
of like the scorpion claws, but take away the smaller claw. Right?
yeah. Like the
So
one
that's
half.
that's
Yeah,
basically all it is. Yeah. They
yeah.
just have that. And so again, would you say if you looked at everything from like the horseshoe crab to a scorpion to a spider, would you say that anything new that's new, or would you say that it's just it's a modification on parts that are already
Yeah.
present. Well, I would
Like
say
even
yeah.
okay, even in the case of spiders with their venom delivery, it's basically just like a delivery system of saliva that the ancestors also had, and the saliva is also often of course been modified to also include venom as well. And
Yeah.
venom proteins are often like I'm not very familiar with spiders, but in snakes it's very known that the snake venom proteins are like borrowed basically from like digestive enzymes or other enzymes as well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Or we've talked about many times the notothenoid ice fish.
Mm-hmm.
The antifreeze glycoprotein was a pancreatic trypsinogen. That's
Yes.
what it was. It was a gene in the pancreas for digesting trypsin, which is an amino acid. But now it's been refunctioned for preventing ice crystal formation in in the bloodstream, which is
Mm-hmm.
totally different than what it originally did. But
Yes.
yeah. So again, you could say, well, yeah, it's just a rearrangement of parts that already existed, but it's for a new function, right? And that's the important point. I guess we'll quickly finish up the objectives, and we'll cut it for today.
Mm-hmm.
I can
Mhm.
identify different models of change in the fossil record, including Darwinian gradual evolution, explosions, and punctuated equilibrium. I can discuss how only intelligent design can explain explosions of fully formed body plans in the fossil record, as these would require rapid infusion of massive amounts of new biological information to encode and integrate the necessary protein, cell types, tissues, and organs to form the new body plans. And that's all just a lie. If you remember, as
And
I
it's
said earlier,
also again too vague as well. Like
yeah, it
how
doesn't mean
much
anything.
massive information do you need? Like how much? Be specific.
Right.
What units? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. None of this means anything. It's just hand waving. Like tardigrades, velvet worms, and arthropods, the panarthropoda, they all have the same Hox genes. We have all the same Hox genes as the lancelet. None of this means anything. You can just say all of it is rearranged existing stuff because that's what it is. Evolution doesn't make new things. It takes existing things and modifies them for new purposes. So, is that the end of the objectives,
Nope.
Peter?
No.
Wait, there's
wait.
more. No, that's the end of objectives.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
yeah,
the
yeah.
end.
All right. So next time we'll do Darwinian gradualism. Okay. All right. So we can.
Or do we have? Or do we next time have the guest on? I don't know.
I don't know.
It depends on if they contact Peter. I guess
That's true. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
what I got from that is that he wanted to be part of one of these to have some input in the discussion because they're battling pretty much the same thing in Brazil.
That's fine with me.
Which we know about. Let me go back here. Which we know about because we have our favorite non-Brazilian Swiss young Earth creationist foolish person.
It's also
who
also like a Harun Yaya. I cannot pronounce his name. Harun.
Yeah, he's
Turkish.
He's in prison.
He's Turkish.
I mean, not in, of course, not in Brazil, but like it's just like different types of creationists use the same arguments.
Because he got his material, I think, from the ICR. I think that's where all of his stuff came from. But
and a lot of it came from Hovind.
Creationism.
A lot of it.
American creationism exports a lot of their material to other countries. Yeah.
Harun Yaya has used material that he literally just copied from Hovind. I've seen some of the
that's
stuff.
another one.
But so we won't see him for I think what was it, 10,000 years?
1,000 years or something?
10,000 I think was the verdict. 10,000 years in jail. Not sure how that's going to happen, but maybe there's an intelligent designer that will make him get that old. I don't know.
Yeah. That's true. I don't know.
It
But
was really a weird. It was. So I always described him as a crossbreed between Hugh Hefner and Kent Hovind. So he had all the Playboy models parading around,
yes.
and then the science came from Kent Hovind. So yeah, that was really
Yeah,
weird.
it was sex trafficking, wasn't it? I think that was what got him in the end.
One of the things, yeah, and tax evasion. It's
Tax evasion.
funny how that is a common thing about
Ought to be
among
consistent.
young Earth
It got Al
creationists.
Capone. It'll get you too.
Yeah.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
It got Kent Hovind.
Anyway,
Even though he denies it, it still got him.
yeah, that's true. So yeah, well, that was a lot of dumb that we read through today.
It's good preparation because I'm hoping for next Thursday to have a guy on my channel called Joe Ensley, and I'd blame Artemis Brain Sample for this because he came up with a video and then I just had to contact him. Who's a new apologist coming up with very old claims and yeah, so
yeah.
Looking forward to that. Other than that, I spent the past 48 hours trying to make Mero, otherwise known as Nervardia, look as ugly as possible. And I showed her this morning, my time this morning, and she liked it.
Mm-hmm.
So keep an eye out for Nervardia. There's going to be a video that I had a tiny little part, although it took me hours. I had to learn completely new skills to make her this ugly, which says something, I guess. I don't know, but it was a fun challenge that was proposed to me, and so hoping I can pull it off. Keep an eye out. Probably Sunday, maybe early next week. He's going to post a new video, and that's going to be a good one.
Nice. Yeah, that'll be awesome. Let's see. Most recently on here, we did the lungfish's tail, which was a lot of fun. It was a very dense video, and actually, it has done quite well in terms of views for our videos. Yeah, it's done quite well. So I'm very happy with the way that one turned out. Very happy with it. The next tale is the coelacanth's tail, which I don't know. Will be out sometime in the future. We'll find out eventually.
I think we will probably discuss something again about stasis and discussing the term behind living fossil. Probably, I think. Or does Dawkins talk about that? I think so. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. I don't remember. I'll have to look at it again. But yeah, we'll look at it again. We'll figure everything out, and it'll be real neat as always. So, alrighty. Well, this was fun. Thank you everybody for watching, and we will see all of you next week.
Bye, everyone.